Great news, guys. You're God. Or is that the bad news? I mean, you know what happens every time some avatar makes their presence known on this planet. People generally tend to react pretty badly. He who speaks the truth has few friends, right? Uh, but, I started this channel years ago basically on the premise that I realized that science had nowhere to go but to start to recognize the universal mind and the role that consciousness plays in the universe, and that they could not verify the words of Hermes and these other initiates for too much longer before they'd be forced to admit it, And here we are in a position where we are on the brink on the eve of our destruction, right? And we are also staring down the barrel of potential awakening and liberation of the entire human race, the possibility to achieve our highest possible potential has never been so high. We have access to resources that are almost unimaginable. And we are seeing through the veil. People are legitimately waking up. A few years ago, I would talk a lot about how pop culture spirituality was really disappointing, that I had become kind of disenfranchised with the psychedelic movement and the plant medicine movement. And that's changing a little bit. That's still a thing. We still have some issues. But there are more and more people that are realizing that the key, the secret, is really the integration of reason and intuitive intelligence, right? It's actually happening. And we, at this point, know why even it's happening. Why it is that, for example, in my community, we had a bunch of people a couple of weeks ago that had all started working on different aspects of the same project at the same time. Right? Simultaneous emergence. We see it online, the group 7 phenomena and awareness of the fractal holographic nature of the universe just sort of popping up in people's minds all over the planet. That entrainment is caused, or at least exacerbated, has negative connotations, but you know what I mean. It's amplified. That's a better word. It's amplified by the solar maxim. We are getting the answers. The truth is hidden from no one, right? It has been occulted, but it has always also been in plain sight. And this puts us in a position that is sort of unique, definitely not sort of, it is completely unique in human history. We have the ability to see the wiring under the board, to describe it, to demonstrate things like scientific downloads that anticipate publication. We have this synchronization of people whose minds are open all around the planet. And we can actually explain how it is that it works. We know some of the mechanistic bases, or at least we're starting to understand them, for a lot of these phenomena that have been decried as hallucinations or insanity or unscientific. At this point, according to major researchers from NASA, Harvard, Princeton, all of these major institutions have made statements to the effect that ideas like the afterlife, telepathy, reincarnation are no longer incongruent with scientific theory. We have an awareness of mechanisms that could at least potentially support that, right? So it's a really tremendous thing to be aware of and to be a part of. And we still have a lot of work to do, but for myself, the confidence that the gnosis is a truly legitimate revelatory process that leads to actual, demonstrable, usable, substantial knowledge, liberating knowledge, knowledge that leads us to an awareness of our birthright sovereignty, right? And that brings us to one of the main points of this stream, which is that my fixation on receiving information through non-ordinary cognitive processes, right? It's not just about like a hobby of being interested in ESP or something, or flaunting a gift. It is about the fact that if we can establish that it is valid, and this is something that Michael Levin has acknowledged. I can't remember his name, but there's a physicist that works for NASA that's been talking about how most of his discoveries actually happen this way. Einstein talked about it. The real key thing there is to liberate us from our dependence upon institutionalized information, right? This is a massive thing. They say that information is the new currency. And if it's true that through the subconscious, and it doesn't even matter if it's pattern recognition or some kind of resonant leakage from an Akashic record, it doesn't matter how it happens. If we can draw attention to successes in that domain sufficiently that there's mainstream recognition of it, if you don't believe in something, or not believe in something, but if you don't believe that something is possible, like absolutely, it's not for you, So once this cat is really out of the bag, it will start a chain reaction of people connecting to the universal mind, of people realizing that their own apparatus and whatever other mechanisms are at work can provide for them all of the answers they could possibly need to achieve their purpose in the universe. And I do believe it's kind of on a need-to-know basis, right? Like the whole goal state thing, and know yourself, and then that brings you into alignment with the collective goal state, right? But the universe wants, I'm using the term once kind of loosely, but the universe is designed to facilitate the maximum expression of the potential of its constituents and the systems that they, make up in aggregate, right? So with that awareness and with that reorientation, the re-engineering of society into something that actually makes sense and is purposeful and will eliminate the constant extinction level threat imposed on us by our existential crisis. Because that's really what it is. When you have no sense of purpose and you have no meaning, the universe is made of reflections. And so that is going to become the external world. And there is no salvation without the Christos. The idea of Christ actually comes from a Greek term called Christos, which is like a spiritual fire. It is your fundamental identity and purpose, and it is your life force and the source of your creative impulses. And without it, you are indeed doomed to hell for all of eternity. Until you have this light kindled within your heart, there will be no salvation for you, and there will be no salvation for the human race. And because this earth is actually either our heaven or our hell, that Christos, no Christos in your heart state in the majority translates into the external manifestation of hell on earth. That's how it works. At every level, there are reflective processes that generate all of creation. And so if we see a dead, purposeless, then that is what we will become ourselves. Like Nietzsche said, if you stare too long into the abyss, it will stare back into you. Even worse, you'll become that abyss, and that's what's happening. And that actually serves the purpose of the overlords, because those that do not have their compass set, uh, someone else can set it for them. And so all of these people that do not have knowledge of their own sovereignty, that do not know what their purpose is, that don't understand what the universe is, and therefore how they should relate to it, they are subject to slavery, basically. You know, they're in service of those that actually do have an active will, the organizing principle. Their charge is present and formidable in the electromagnetic field, right? They have suppressed the knowledge that leads to this awareness for 2,000 years. It's why they created Christianity. It's why they created Islam. It's why they created Hinduism. And it's probably why they created Buddhism. People hate it when I say that, because everyone wants to think, well, oh no, Buddhism is the good one. And maybe that's true. But if you think about it, when somebody wakes up and they start looking for, truth, and they're climbing the mountain, and there's this little fat bald guy that says, no, forget about that. Just detach from everything. Come over here and sit until you just lose all sense of identity, and you just become part of the void. Kind of sounds like the devil trapping people in a way, doesn't it? So you know what I mean? All of these institutionalized systems were engineered to occult the face of God, and demonized, and they're the messengers persecuted and tortured, and that's why the fiddler has now stepped to the road, saying everything must be returned that is owed. The Madonna, she still has not showed. It is our existential reckoning. It is time to reclaim our sense of purpose and our sovereignty. And if we fail to do that, we don't deserve to exist. That's another thing I say sometimes that makes people really angry. But it's true. If we don't have the guts to stand up for our rights and our dignities and our purpose, and align with that fearlessly regardless of the consequences, then it's really a matter of natural selection if we are eliminated. Because what are we doing then? Just wasting resources and taking up space. Without the spark, everything is nothing. That is absolute facts. And it's funny because I actually popped on to kind of talk about this hologram thing and just got caught up in the other thoughts, I guess. But I do want to talk about one little element of that. I'm sure most of you guys watching this are aware that I've been really fixated on the Fibonacci. It's not exactly just the Fibonacci, but the whole idea of fractal, hologram-based consciousness and systems, and the whole thing. It's all that. So I was thinking about the occult today, and particularly the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, because I had to send a client instructions, and I realized that in the Western occult tradition, one of the fundamental mechanisms that makes things work is the fact that you condense information into a single symbol. So there are correspondences between these things, right? So they're related concepts, but they're not the same. So you have in the case of the lesser banishing ritual, you have a direction, an element, an archangel, and a god name. They all have similar symbolism, but they're different levels of it. And so with practice, it eventually condenses into this single symbol, so you can manage all this stuff really easily. And it hit me that we're not doing anything. Those things already exist in a fractal sphere. And what we're actually doing is developing an awareness and a relationship with these things that are already there. We're not really composing these spheres, What we're doing is creating a sort of navigable holosphere that we can enter into and develop a relationship with. And one of the other interesting aspects of this is that these spheres that we're creating, thought form spheres, fractal thought form spheres, they're actually sort of like living dynamic fractal systems themselves, because within that sphere of meaning, there are connections that exist. Like if you think of a Mandelbrot set where you see the big spiral arms, the thick ones, and then there are little ones going everywhere, right? So those are the connections between these things. And if the magician that is interfacing with these things is evolving himself, then those relationships remain dynamic and they're constantly changing and evolving. And because this interaction is entrained isn't really the right word, but it becomes stronger with practice. This is one of the reasons the magician in the Hermetic orders does this in the morning and at night every day for a year at least. You're strengthening this electromagnetic bond or interface between yourself and these holographic thought forms, but they're actually in the fucking hologram. So when you start to elevate yourself and work on yourself and the relationships between the different aspects of this information that's contained in these symbols, it's reconfiguring in the world at large, not just in your microcosm. So I just wanted to mention that because I think that kind of ritual work, when you really understand on that level the mechanisms behind it, it's easy to see how important it is. And it's very difficult in this day and age to fight a revolution, right? Like, nobody wants to sing a little bit out of tune or be the backbone of a rebel platoon. It's too soon. You might get laughed at. You might get fined. Oh no, my battery just died on my camera. I knew I forgot to charge it. So I'm just going to say a little bit more and pop off because, this group is too small and it's too late at night if there's not a bunch of us. Damn, I can't believe my camera died. It's crazy. Anyways, what was I saying? Nobody want to sing a little bit out of tune or be the backbone of a rebel platoon. It's too soon. You might get laughed at. You might get fined. Yeah, so like in the 1960s, it wasn't that hard for the Black Panthers to find funding, right? Like people that were trying to fight had access to funds. But in this day and age of the Patriot Act and the surveillance state and everything, people are not only scared because they know that the empire is collapsing and that that's going to hurt their bank accounts, but they're also afraid that if they send money to some group of people, that they're going to get sent to Guantanamo Bay, And also, the propaganda machine has been running on high for a long time, right? And it's gotten more sophisticated. It's also more ubiquitous in our lives. It is an ever-present source of entrainment. You might say disentrainment, right? So we don't have the capacity to communicate directly with people in the way that we may have been able to even 20 years ago because they are so completely brainwashed. And the brainwashing is so sophisticated so that their cognitive dissonance, right? They have two opposing beliefs, and if you challenge either side, the instinct is fight or flight, not listen and think. So this kind of work that I was describing with the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, I think is even more efficacious, really, than doing live streams on the internet, So my camera is dead and nobody's here. So, I mean, not nobody. I really do appreciate the three of you, but you know what I mean? I don't ever stream on Mondays because, it's just not a good night. But I wanted to talk about this, and I'm glad I did. So thank you guys for being here. Please consider supporting the channel, and I'll see you Wednesday night.